Good morning, friends. Good morning, it's another covenant. Welcome to this racial justice speaking series. Today we our guest speakers are Reverend Dr. Alonzo Johnson and Margaret Nwale. Did I say that correctly? Did I pronounce that correctly, Margaret?
Yes, you
Just make sure.
did.
Okay. Uh, and they come from the Office of the Self-Development of People in Louisville, Kentucky. Most of us know it as SDOP. So they'll tell us a little bit about themselves in a little bit. But before that, I want to say a few words about some of the things that are happening in the Synod of the Covenant. Um, so we all know that the first Wednesday of every month, we have what we call monthly preaching workshops. We had this month's workshop last week or 2 weeks ago. I can't, things are happening too fast. And with us was Dr. Deborah Mumford from Louisville Theological Seminary. Uh, Today we have this Rachel speaking justice series. The last one for the year will be in October 1st, and that will be led by Dr. William Yu from Columbia Theological Seminary. He'll be talking to us about his latest book, talking about the history of race and racism in the Presbyterian Church, USA. We also have lectionary group that happens the second and fourth Wednesday. Heather, correct me if I'm wrong, of the month. And Heather Johnson, who is our office administrator, uh, and John Carlisle, who is one of our ministers, teaching elders, they both lead this lectionary group. So if you catch yourself in needing inspiration or fellowship, as you prepare your sermon, please come and join us the second and fourth Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m.
Yes.
Thank you, Heather, for confirming that. We also, as you all know, the Synod of the Covenant was granted an AI grant to resource the Synod on this topic. So an AI committee was formed after a survey was distributed to the entire Synod. And they're working hard developing a curriculum, but there's a lot of excitement. So stay tuned for more information. CGPI, which is the Cultivating Gift of Preaching initiative, was a success. We celebrated the annual gathering slash conference this past June in Alma College. It was phenomenal keynote speaker every year. Our participants rave about the quality, the caliber. So we give thanks to God first, and to Heather, and to Matt, who is Matt Adam Bruce, who is our director for that program. And two more things that I want to share is we are still receiving applications for the anti-racism team. This team is the one that is going to lead the Synod on matters of racial justice, resourcing the Synod, supporting our presbyteries and congregations, and most likely will lead the mandate that just came from General Assembly to train all leaders on matters of anti-racism. So if you yourself are interested, I know maybe I should not say this, but I think she will mind. Leslie is one of our applicants. I'm excited about that. If you yourself are interested in becoming part of the art uh, group. That's how we're calling it, Art Anti-Racism Team. Um, please, please apply. If you know someone who might have the skills and the call to lead the synod in adopting anti-racism as a way of being, please send them the link. All this information is on the website. And we are having Black Leaders Retreat for Black leaders in Michigan coming up this September. So keep all of that in prayer. If you know someone that will have liked to be here, but for various circumstances was not able to be here, know that there's this series and this conversation today is being recorded and it will be available on our YouTube channel, I think within 24 hours. So without further ado, let's welcome officially Reverend Dr. Alonzo Johnson and Margaret Mwale. As I said, they lead the office of SDOP. I met Margaret on my seeking information about SDOP, and Alonso was so gracious to include his colleague, which tells you about his character. And I got the pleasure to meeting her, servant of Christ, very committed to this work. So you'll be with a treat. And I know Alonso for many years now. But his wife before him. But we accepted him too. So anyway, but no, just kidding. We all know Alonso. We know about his commitment to justice, his commitment to the Lord, his commitment to this church. So it's my pleasure that he said yes to the Sin of the Covenant to help and to share his God-given gifts with all of us. So Alonso and Margaret, floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Thank you. And thank you all. Margaret, would you like to go first in introducing yourself? No? This is the first time this has ever happened. I am Reverend Alonzo Johnson. I am the manager of the self-development of people for the National Church. And I'm excited to be here with you all. I'm excited to, among friends, which is great. And that's even more fun. And so it's good to see you all and good to be able to share some of the ways that SDOP is addressing the intersectional issues of justice. And so we are excited. Some of you have been involved in SDOP, and what we're hoping to do is to really kind of reignite passion around some of this work, and especially as we are coming up on a 55th year of being in existence and engaging communities. And so we're excited to be here to be able to have conversations and to explore ways that SDOP does this work.
Thank you, Alonzo. And it is so good to see all of you. I know a number of you from past interactions, and it's great to see some new faces as well. Rutha May, thank you for that kind introduction. And really excited about the work that the Synod of the Covenant is doing around this issue. And I will quickly say, Margaret Mwale, originally from Zambia. I have been with SDOP for many years now, and my work revolves around community engagement. So I coordinate and lead SDOP's efforts to engage with community groups that are interested in learning more about SDOP and potentially partnering with us, but there are a lot of other things that we do around community engagement as well. And then we also have a grant process for our Mid-Council SDOP committees. I oversee that process. We have around 28 Mid-Council committees at present. And it really is a joy to be part of SDOP. And Rutha May, everything you said about Alonzo is so true. And I say that not just because you're on the call, Alonzo. He really is gifted. And it is an honor to work with him, with you, Alonzo. And also the work of SDOP. I feel very deeply about this work because it is something that I think the church needs to continue to know about. SDOP has been around for 50 plus years, and in that time frame partnered with over 5,500 community-based organizations around the US and outside of the US. and given out over $95 million. And those numbers actually, I know, are not what they are as of today. Those are, they're a few years old. But I say all that to help us all really give thanks to the church for starting the Ministry of SDOP, for the foresight that it had to center the communities that we work with in this work, where they are the ones that are really leading this work, and we're learning from them as well. So having said all that, thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of this, and looking forward to our conversation.
I have a PowerPoint to share, if you all are okay with that. Let's see if I can get this right. I usually can. Let's see. All right. And then I'm going to need to go for the beginning of this here. And share, and see what happens, and hopefully we'll go from the beginning. So can you all?
It's coming up.
All right, it's coming up. Okay, good.
Yeah, I'll tell you, because now you might not see all of this. Yes, it's coming up. There's
a bunch of folks on the page. Okay, let me go back and
there was like a bar that was covering
okay,
the
yeah,
PowerPoint.
that's
So
that bar that happens at the top. Let me see if I can move it, and I can also get it to disappear, but I do want to go to the beginning.
okay.
So for some strange reason, I don't know why it's doing that, because it knows I want to do something good. So that's why it's I'm beginning. Okay. I don't know why it's doing. Okay, let's see. Try this. Okay. Can you all see that screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Technology.
If it gives you problems, you can if
We,
you want, you can send it to me.
we almost have it.
Yeah, take your time.
Of course.
Just
Diane, you remember this class in seminary, right?
okay, now we can see the PowerPoint.
All right, wonderful. Can you see
Yeah,
it?
the gray bar,
But there you
Alonzo,
go.
is there.
It's still there.
Yes.
Okay, it's what it is.
Yeah.
It's the screen bar. That's okay. I'm going to get rid of it in a second.
Yeah,
I'll have to do this.
One left, one came up.
I will let it. I will float it. How's that?
There you go. And then there was one small one left. I don't know if you can see it on your screen. That's what I'm telling you.
Okay,
there you
it
go.
popped up and it disappeared. Did it disappear?
Disappeared. Yeah, there's just a little one. There's a little block on
the bottom left.
On the bottom. Thank you. Thank
right
you,
over
Margaret.
here on the
yeah, there you go. There you go.
Right there. Okay, that I can't do much with it because that's the
okay.
controls. Let me see if I can try to move it up here. Is that better?
No, but I think we can still see.
You can see everything.
Yeah.
That's important thing.
Yes, there you go.
All right, so wonderful. So here's we of course are now we've moved to the 21st century. So we have QR codes. So feel free. And the neat thing about these QR codes that they bring you right to those particular pieces. So if you need community brochures in digital form, church brochures in digital form, and it takes you to the new website, which is wonderful, the new Presbyterian Life and Witness. And so we call this walking with the least of these. And because here's the thing about racial justice, as we all know, I don't think you can talk about class without talking about race. We can't talk about poverty without having a conversation about class and race and gender and age, right? So there are multiple intersections, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But one of the important things about racial justice, and especially SDOP, is that we were created out of that concern. And we were created, and I'll get into the history in a second, but we were created out of that concern for racial justice and economic inequity. And so, and many of you know, I think, the history of self-development of people, but we always like to go through it to be reminded that SDOP is a historic organization. We are in textbooks. It's amazing, but we also recognize just the power of this work. And the longevity of this work and the continued effectiveness of it because it comes from our communities. And so we're excited about that. So the screen should say historical roots, right? So is there historical roots on the screen there for you all?
You're good.
I'm
It's
good. Okay, wonderful.
Yes.
yeah, there's a little one, but
Thank
you
you,
know, we can
Margaret.
see
Thank you.
everything.
Yes.
Can you see
Thank
everything?
you.
Okay. So the historical roots of SDOP, it starts with this guy, James Foreman, and he was a civil rights leader. He worked with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in the 1960s, and he was a firebrand, right? Foreman was notorious, powerful rhetorician, notorious for calling out racism and working with Kwame Ture, right, who was the leader uh, of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in the 60s. Foreman moved and became involved in the Black Economic Development Conference in Detroit. So this is in your backyard, right? This particular organization got together to talk a lot about the needs of Black people and specifically the economic needs. What will we need to do to support economically Black communities? And so this was an amalgam of different uh, folks. You had religious leaders, you had activists, you had economists. I mean, these were folks that came together in this conference to really start thinking about what will need to happen for Black economic development in the country. And so out of this group came a document called the Black Manifesto, which you can actually get access to. And if you don't have it, I can send it to you. It's a very fascinating document that calls for reparations from white churches for past injustices to Black people, right? So this document was a way of acknowledging historical harms, but also acknowledging that here's one of the ways that this particular situation can be remedied or moved towards a remedy. And so the conference put together the Black Manifesto, which is really fascinating because what it does, it lays out several different things about programs that would need to be funded, right? So the actual structure of the Black Manifesto, you could see where Black Presbyterians got excited about this idea of funding projects, right? So you start to see this happen. And so after the conference, Foreman went to Riverside Church in New York City, interrupted services and good protest, and began to read the Black Manifesto from top to bottom. And of course, people were very upset. And the plan was that Foreman was going to go around to various religious communities. He was going to go to the temple. One thing I read said that one of the temples in New York City, a handful of its members stood outside with baseball bats waiting for him to come. And so this was pretty spicy, situation there. During the same time period, I forgot to mention that Foreman was invited to the General Assembly of the Presbyterian Church in 1970 in San Antonio. I'm sorry, 1969 in San Antonio, right? And so he was invited to come and read the Black Manifesto. And then at the same time, a bunch of folks, a few Black Presbyterians, one being Gaylord Wilmore, Edler Hawkins, these folks that were part of a committee at the time, they invited Foreman and also Eliezer Risco Lozada, who was part of La Raza, which was a radical Latinx organization fighting for justice well. So they invited both of them. So you can imagine that this was an interesting General Assembly in 1969, right? And so Brother Lozada came and talked about the concerns of poverty to the General Assembly. So both of these figures of the General Assembly, Foreman read the Black Manifesto. And based on the history of it, of course, as you can imagine, Presbyterians were really happy about this, right? Basically saying you owe the Black community reparations, right? So there was a lot of stirring. And then, of course, Eliezer Risco Lozada got up and said, hey, we support this idea of the Black Manifesto, and the church really needs to come to grips with not just its inability to address economic disparity, but also the ways that they have been part of creating it. And so Presbyterians, after they were angry, right, as you can imagine. They responded to Risco and Foreman by appointing a committee to study the matters that have been raised by them. And when that committee reported back to the General Assembly in 1970, they adopted the committee's recommendation, and that's where the Presbyterian Committee, that's our proper name, the Presbyterian Committee on the Self-Development of People, started. And so we have quite a history and quite a controversial history, but one that also illustrates the importance of the church engaging in racial justice and the issues of racial justice. I found over the years I've been doing a lot of kind of research on our history, self-development of people, and of course I won't read all these things. But as you can see on the screen, what's very interesting about these are actual reports from the General Assemblies of that time period. The first one is a report on the Council of Church Support, which were responsible with lifting up the fund for the self-development of people, which was called the 50 million fund. And the 50 million fund, it was called that because it matched what Foreman said. Foreman said that he didn't say 50 million, but he said $500 million need to go back to Black communities. This is what Foreman was lifting up in the Black Manifesto. But the 50 million fund was this idea to walk alongside this larger idea of funding projects, right? And so the council had approved this. In the center is the actual actions of the General Assembly, right? So they lay it out. If you look at number 3, you can see the outline of financial demands made by Eleazar Risco and James Foreman. And then in the last one is the United Presbyterian Church when they were in Philly. And it basically lays out the 182nd General Assembly established the Fund for the Self-Development of People. And talks about the reasons for this action. There were several things that happened at that assembly in '69. Something called PEDCO was also created, which is almost like a micro lending program as well. So there were concerns about how the church will interface with low income communities and the church's responsibility to be in deep solidarity with communities who are struggling, but also in a way that would be different. So the mandate, this was Rochester, I think the Rochester General Assembly, there was some connection to that too, as we were given our task to do the work. But over 50 years, the mandate of the Presbyterian Self-Development of People has been to assist the Presbyterian Church USA in carrying out its global commitment to work towards the self-development of economically poor, oppressed, and disadvantaged people who own, control, and benefit directly from projects that promote long-term change in their lives, right? So this is, many of you are aware of this mandate. If you're doing the SDOP work, right, we make sure that people understand this mandate that has been established by the 182nd General Assembly and reaffirmed in 1987. So that's our history, right? And our history kind of led us to thinking about what does it mean to do this work in the church, right? So SDOP is a ministry, right? And so every time I think of SDOP, I think of this quote from Howard Thurman. I know that Western Reserve, I know Laura Van Dale and Western Reserve, you all did an amazing study on Jesus and the Disinherited for Thurman, in which I was a part, and it was wonderful. And I'm always reminded of this word, this quote. They are the poor, the disinherited, the dispossessed, and they live with their backs constantly against the law. And of course, there's some good scriptural examples. So you can see as the building of this ministry happened, that there's a theological component to what we do, right? That very important. If we're going to be a mission and a ministry, there's a theological component. But also, the idea was that if we're going to do mission, we're going to do it differently. And we're not going to do it in a way that will exploit. We will not do it in a way that's paternalistic. And we will not do it in a way that is neo-colonial. So the idea of SDOP was to really kind of listen to communities. And our work in ministry, it aligns with PCUSA's Matthew 25 initiatives. So if you're still doing Matthew 25 work, I know many of us are still engaging that work. We align with that work, and we can walk alongside you in that work. And Margaret?
Thank you, Alonzo. So on the screen, well, first of all, you'll see one of our youth-led projects on my right side of the screen. And that is one of our projects, I believe, in somewhere in the Midwest. So SDOP has awarded so many different types of projects, different category of projects. And you will see pictures in this presentation that point to really the work of PCUSA through the church, through the Presbyterian Church USA. You will see the work of the Presbyterian Church USA through the ministry of SDOP, excuse me. And so, what do we look for, as we are looking at community groups? And I might use the terms interchangeably. Sometimes we say grassroots groups, sometimes we'll say community-based organizations, CBOs, but it's basically the same thing. So they do need to be low-income groups, and they also need to be groups that are seeking to take charge of their own lives. And so words that come to mind when I look at that second bullet point are self-determination, but also dignity, because the way that the church decided to do ministry as we partner with these communities is that they are the ones that are going to make decisions about what they want to do. They're the ones that are going to tell us these are the felt needs that we have in our communities. We're struggling with food insecurity, or we are right now dealing with a lot of domestic violence issues, or we need to do a project centered around water justice. Or, there are climate issues that our community specifically is really struggling with. And then, of course, we know what's going on with immigration. We have groups in the past and currently that come to us and say, hey, we really need to learn to better advocate for ourselves as immigrants or as folks that are undocumented. So whatever issue you can think of that maybe you read about in the newspaper, the church is doing something about that through the SDOP ministry. And I think that sometimes people don't realize that right within their presbytery or their city, that there is a SDOP project that the church has funded that is working on whatever issues they might be reading about. So the groups do need to be in the process of organizing to do something about their condition or to have already organized. What do we mean by that? That means SDOP really is one of the few places where grassroots groups or community-based organizations can come to. And when we say grassroots / community-based organizations, they actually, so for example, a group of residents, community residents can come to us without being formally a 501c3 status. So it's okay if they're formally organized and have 501c3 status, but it's also okay if it's a group of residents that come to us and say, hey, we want to work on increasing neighborhood safety, or we want to we are youth that were formerly part of gangs and we want to do better. We've come out of those gangs and we need some help some financial help to get our project off the ground, to maybe start a small worker-owned business cooperative that will help them to move out of poverty, or at least start that journey to move out of poverty. So I say all that because it's really important to recognize that the groups, that third bullet point, the groups can be very loosely formed. They don't need to have that structure of having 501c3 status. And then they need to be seeking long-term change for their lives or communities. Emergencies happen, of course, but with regards to the way the church, the PCUSA decided to have SDOP function, the groups need to be seeking to work on things that have been systemic, that have resulted in the condition that they're in, structures and systems that they're working to dismantle, and not so much coming to us because they have an emergency. Of course, there are other places hopefully that they can go to for that sort of help. But just to help us all understand, when SDOP was set up as we heard that rich history that it has. This is what the church had in mind that I've just explained. And then they need to also have ownership of their project or their initiative and to directly benefit from it. So what that means is I think I would invite you to consider thinking of the way SDOP functions with regards to these projects that we're speaking to, or the way we partner with communities from the standpoint of the project members or the group members. The projects are done by the project members. They're for the project members, and they will have, through decision making, direct ownership and control. So for the people, by the people, of the people, if that is helpful. And Presbyterian Western Reserve has got a great SDOP committee. We're fortunate to have Francis Miller, who chairs that committee, and great committee members, all of you, staff liaison. I know, Laura, you've been involved with the committee as well. So we're grateful for the work that you all do in working alongside all of these wonderful groups that we work with. Okay, so this is really a very small sample of the types of projects that the Presbyterian Committee on the Self-Development of People has partnered with through the years. So one type are capacity building projects. These are projects that build people's personal capacity to become self-sufficient. So what could be an example of this, for instance, might be a group of community residents coming to us and saying, hey, we want to be able to purchase equipment. I'm thinking of one group in particular. I think it was in Phoenix, Arizona, that I was speaking with one time, and they wanted to, they were making tamales, but they wanted to approach SDOP to get additional, to get funding so that they could increase the capacity of the tamales that they were making. And so the tamales, so of course that was an income generating project because the tamales were bringing in, supplemental income that the project members were then able to use again in on that path of seeking to continue to move out of poverty. So that is one example. And then we have cooperative economic opportunities. Cooperative economic projects benefit group members economically. And one quick example of this could be a farming co-op. We have a lot of farming cooperatives, and for instance, they have approached us and said, hey, like one group I'm thinking of is in rural Kentucky that came to us and said they needed to funding to get a refrigerated truck, because that is something that they then could use to expand their capacity to keep their produce longer and to do a better job with marketing and getting their produce to market. So those are just two quick examples of what those particular types of projects are. But again, we have funded over 5,500 projects, so there's so much of a variety that we see with all of the project applications that come in. Alonzo?
It's important to understand too that SDOP, we fund advocacy programs. People ask and say, well, you don't do advocacy. Yes, we do. Community advocacy is a really integral part of poverty eradication, right? If no one's doing the groundwork, if no one's questioning the systems, if no one's doing that advocacy work, then how do we, bring accountability to the systems that oppress? And so community advocacy and organizing as another category. And this is not exhaustive. We just wanted to give you an idea of the kind of things we do. So projects that advocate against a system that ignores needs of poor communities. One thing, one of our programs I can think of is We the People of Detroit. Many of you know that program. They're the Water Warriors. And we had a relationship with We the People of Detroit years ago as they were working on making that vision happen. So we're one of the organizations that helped fund them. Affordable housing. I know many of you all are probably addressing the issue of unhoused people and affordable housing. And so we wanted to lift this up because SDOP has a real stake in addressing the issues of affordable housing. We know through affordable, if people can't afford housing, it affects all other aspects of their lives, right? If you don't have affordable housing, you are constantly in financial jeopardy, right? You may not be able to, your kids may not be able to attend certain schools regularly and consistently. You may not be able to have access to transportation, all these other kinds of intersectional issues that come along with affordable housing. And I don't know if you all have had the chance yet. I'm going to plug Presbyterian disaster assistance film from David Barnhart about evictions called Evicting the American Dream. A few of us have done a study. Laura Van Dale was part of that study with our poverty group that meets, which is an amalgam of mid-council leaders and folks, and also some of us from the staff of the National Church. And that film is really powerful because it's sobering because it lifts up several issues that are really important for us as the church to be thinking about as we address the issue of homelessness and affordable housing. Neighborhood revitalization, really important, right? These are organizations that are addressing blight, right? They're addressing those situations in which that create poverty, right? When property taxes go down, right? Where values go down, all those particular types of things, and also gentrification, right? There are several organizations that we have funded that are addressing those issues. One is incredible organization called CLT in Rochester, the Community Land Trust, and they have purchased the housing in certain neighborhoods, and they've built them up and kept the price point affordable, right? And so neighborhood revitalization is another aspect of what we do. Water, farming projects, right? I think particularly of course, the water warriors, but I also think of farming projects like Alianza Agricola out of Rochester. These were folks who are farmers that were trying to figure out how do we get family members and fellow farmers to their doctor's appointments? How do we get kids to school? And so they worked with an organization in New York City called the Green Light Program, and they were able to get licenses for those driver's licenses for those who need to get people around, and of course, food insecurity. And many of us on this call, we are all dealing with this issue, right? When folks have to buy food from the gas station, right? Or when and affordability being an issue, so compounded with affordability issues, food insecurity. So this idea that that there are neighborhoods that are food insecure, that they don't have access to the kinds of things needed to create wholeness and to create neighborhoods that have that are whole and eating well. And so this gives you an idea of the kind of variety and the diversity of programs that we fund, because these are all integral parts of poverty eradication, right? As we are doing this work together, and as SDOP is engaged in this work, we are engaging the minds and the thoughts and the hands of communities who know best what they need, right? And this is an integral part of who we are, is that we listen to communities. We understand that they know best how to address these issues, and they have a lot to teach the church in this way. So as we look at these project categories, again, which are not super exhaustive, you get a sense of the diverse aspects of poverty eradication that SDOP engages. SDOP has several levels of engagement. You all are familiar with these levels. One is our national committee, and also our mid-council local committees. Just as Margaret mentioned, I'm going to say something about the national committee really quickly, and Margaret will talk about the mid-council committee. The picture that you're looking at in the background is, many of you know, SDOP has an international component. This is Cologne, Panama. I took this picture in Cologne to give you a sense of the struggle, the struggle to maintain life in situations of poverty. The picture is indicative of low, what's happening with poor communities, but also many of us either have lived or live near cities that kind of favor this, that looks like this. The National Committee, it's our National Committee, a group of folks that make decisions about our projects on a national level. We are broken into 4 different task forces: Northeast, Midwest, South, and West. And basically, our national committee are folks like yourself, right? Many of them are Presbyterian, and they are engaging in the work of SDOP by engaging communities, interfacing with communities who are doing incredible work, and also being involved in awarding grants. And so our national committee are folks that come together, and they're also really integral in helping establish the direction of self-development of people. Like, what do we need to be doing? How do we need to be engaging in these very different times? What types of things do we need to think about? So they're also responsible for strategy, and they're also responsible for the larger church engagement as well, right? Connecting with presbyteries and synods, right? And in addition to connecting with communities. And Margaret will talk a little bit about the Mid-Council.
Thank you, Alonzo. So the Mid-Council SDOP committee, also referenced as our local committees, really do pretty much the same thing that the National Committee does, except at the Mid-Council level. And I mentioned earlier that we have around 28 Mid-Council SDOP committees. We have them across all of those task force regions that were mentioned, Northeast, in the West, Midwest, and the South. And the local committees have at least 5 people, is what the minimum number of committee members is. And then we have a number of them that have more than 5 people, 5 committee members. So we probably have maybe, I would say, over 150 SDOP committee members at the local level. And they fund projects as well using the same funding criteria that was shared earlier. We have seen great projects coming out of these committees. I'm thinking of, for example, the work in Hawaii that Pacific Presbyterian SDOP committee is doing. And National SDOP has also collaborated with PDA and PHP to do some work in Hawaii. Should mention that. And I know Western Reserve, we've seen great projects come out of there as well. And a lot of other presbyteries that are working hard to connect with folks that are struggling in communities around them and want to make sure that as a church, we are coming alongside those communities to partner with them on projects that they want to work on, that they see that there is a need in their communities to make a difference around. So I will stop there.
So here's a question for you. As a church, what challenges do you think we face in eradicating poverty in our current times? What do you all think about this? We could do it one or two ways. We could put it in the chat, or we can very briefly out loud just kind of mention some of the challenges you are facing. What challenges are you facing?
I think for me, it's one of the things that I reflect on of the challenges is the ascription of morality towards poverty. So the system has sold us the lie that if you're poor, somehow you are of poor moral character, that you do not like to work. This whole idea of what is it the saying goes in this country, putting yourself by the bootstraps, which is a complete lie. It's I try to tell people poverty is by design, and it's there's it's very powerful for me when I read those words in the Bible, and Jesus says, "You always have the poor with you." It's a calling to all of us, the church. Like, you always have it, because the system is going to guarantee that there's poor people. And while it guarantees that uh, poor people are exist, in the same time, it tells us, but don't worry, if you do X, Y, and Z, you can come out of poverty. And it's like having us in this hamster wheel where we don't get out of that. And then we create a middle class to kind of give us this illusion of accomplishing or achieving the American dream. When in reality we're like one step more closer to poverty than the rich. So, but I think for me, I think it's the hyper spiritualization, and also the ascription of morality to poverty, which I think it's quite the lie and quite the propaganda. So I'll say.
Right. Absolutely.
I often think to the Presbyterian Hunger Program's slogan, and I don't know if this is still current or if this goes back some years, but the PHP used to say they do work alleviating hunger and eliminating its causes. And I used to use that a lot when I would go around and speak to congregations, because, and I think looking at poverty is the same kind of thing. I think we are good at doing the alleviating part as church people. That's a temporary fix. It's a more manageable fix. We can tangibly do things where we can see how we are temporarily helping. I think the tricky part is the eliminating its causes, the eradicating poverty. What do we need to do culturally, systemically, structurally, morally, Rutame, to pick up on what you just said? What do we need to do, and how do we make those changes in our own lives, in our own communities, to actually eradicate poverty, to eliminate the causes of hunger? And I think folks are overwhelmed by the bigness of that. Again, the alleviating part seems a little more manageable. The eradicating part seems really big and unmanageable. I think also it's a lot of folks not willing to make some changes in their own lives, not realizing. I think it's really easy for us to live in a place where we don't have to encounter the poverty. And if we don't live with it every day, then why should we care about it? So I think sometimes it is lack of communication or education. I think sometimes it is refusal to learn those things, to know those things. It's and refusal to step in and start actually doing some of the hard work, which, as we talked about earlier, with some of the programs SDOP does, can involve advocacy work, can involve systemic change work. And I think that in the 17 years I've been doing this presbytery job, that continues to be the piece that is harder to get church people to engage in.
Yeah, I combining both of those things. When you ask the question, Alonzo, one thing that I encounter is that as church people, we are often more comfortable with charity than justice. And even so, we do the food pantries or so on, that kind of thing. But I think that, and Ruth, hi girl, we were in a cohort together. So, she talked about, the moral judgment, and I'm just gonna say that a lot of us are uncomfortable with people who are in poverty and the things that may show up because people are in poverty, though. I heard someone, maybe a William Yu, who said that, people weren't born poor, they were made poor by the systems. And so then there are challenges. And I know of a church, which I will not name, but even like did bags like to hand out to the poor, right? Who is not, that's not even addressing systems, but then someone's actually said, we put these in our cars and we will carry them around to give to the homeless. But then, we can like open the window of our car just enough to slip the bag through. So, and I'm like, oh, wow. So, and it's because, sometimes we are afraid of the people or not connected to the people that we're seeking to help, and there are challenges there. I mean, so, but the mindset of what we're doing. So while you're talking, I'm thinking of all of these people that are organizations that are doing the work that my church won't do or so on, but that I should be reaching out to tell about self-development of people. So yeah.
Amen. The dehumanization that happens in poverty, absolutely. Or when just everything that you've all mentioned about kind of the dehumanization, the moralistic aspects. We'll touch on a little bit of that later too, and how it connects with our work. So this is Margaret is doing this, and this is our little magic screen here. I'm going to do what it needs to do. There it is.
Okay, so why are people poor? Root causes of poverty. And I think this was just referenced a minute ago, i.e., the language of root causes of poverty. So I do think that all of what is on the screen, when it's possible that it can apply to one person, and that's really overwhelming. So when you look at that first bullet point, fair and equitable practices, um, and one of the things I will say is, when I think of, excuse me, fair and equitable practices, there are different reasons why we may not have fair and equitable practices. But I think one of the things actually is policy, right? Like what administration is in power, and this goes not just for the US, but across, different countries as well. And they are going to certainly, have their fair share of setting. Probably shouldn't say fair because they're going to have their turn at determining what policies are going to be in place. So when I think of some of the responses that I just heard, or even as I'm looking at what's in the chat, healthcare, like who's in power? Again, I'm thinking the US as well as outside of the US, and what sort of policies are they putting in place? How are they being fair? Those policies are not fair to communities, right? Um, I watch public TV quite a bit, and yesterday there was it's a repeat actually, repeat program, but it was focused on senior citizens, and the title of that piece was "Clocking Back In," because a lot of senior citizens that had retired are clocking back in because they can't afford to be retired, and it was actually really sad to listen, to what they're dealing with. And of course, we know it's across the board. It's not just senior citizens. But I mentioned that just as an example of when we talk about fair and equitable practices, because SNAP benefits, I think maybe most of you know that already, they've been dealt a blow. And so, it does matter who is actually setting that policy. It does matter, who is going to lead us. Again, I'm speaking generally, in the US and outside of the US. And coincidentally, today is our election day in Zambia. The presidential elections are today. So this is really very much on my mind as I, talk about policy and etc. Who are the leaders? Sustainable employment. We have a lot of people that are the working poor. They have worked for many, many years and can't seem to get ahead. If somebody is working maybe 3, 4 jobs, it takes a toll on them emotionally, mentally, physically, and just in so many ways. And yet, people are poor. Because of what I was talking about earlier, but also because they may be working but just not getting ahead. And then affordable housing, I think that was mentioned earlier. This is a huge problem all over the country, really, where people just cannot get ahead in terms of their housing. I'm trying to remember the rent eats first. Alonzo, what is that the title of the book? The rent.
It's from Evicted, the book Evicted from Matthew Desmond, and it's one of
Thank
my
you.
favorite
Okay.
quotes. The rent eats first.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. And that is so true because, think of what the big things we spend money on. It is housing, it is transportation, right? It is healthcare and all of those things. It's just so hard for the working poor today. So decent and affordable healthcare, I already alluded to that. But imagine someone that loses their job, then that means maybe they had some form of healthcare, but that means they lose their healthcare. So now they have to struggle. How are they going to pay their rent? They maybe lose their car. How are they going to manage transportation? Climate stability, that is something that has been real for a while now, but is becoming more and more real. I don't know how many fires have been burning in this country for the past several years. And of course, we're seeing what's going on in Europe as well. Lots of fires there. We're seeing floods here in our country. There's so much happening in terms of uh, climate instability. And so we have people that are being impacted that are already in a vulnerable position economically. And now if we add on that, their house floods and they have all these other things that are coming at them, it's really hard to get out of that poverty. And then we have reputable financial products/credit. Uh, I think that it is fair to say that if we drive around poorer neighborhoods, we'll see those, what are they called? The places where you can get a check and it's like you have to keep paying, and so you're never
Check cashing
payday
places.
loans,
Yeah,
payday loans, excuse me.
Right.
Yeah. Payday loans. They are really predatory because it is a cycle. It becomes a vicious cycle where somebody gets one of those payday loans and then, basically their next check is spoken for. And it just goes on. And the interest rates are really very, very high, which is why it is predatory lending. And then quality education/training/skills. Yes, some people can do okay without, getting their GED or going to college. But I think that it's fair to say that the better education someone has, the more educated that they are, and the more training they have, the more skilled they have, and they have a better shot at getting into the marketplace and getting a wage that will sustain them. So those are just some things for us to think about.
Right. Thank you, Margaret. The intersectionality of some of these. My mother was a victim of predatory lending in Monroe County, Pennsylvania. She was signed up for some 100-year mortgage. Went from and she was subprime, so it offered her 5% and it jumped up to 12. And at the same time, my mother was battling cancer and lost that battle. But watching the kind of the mixture of these particular types of things, my mom struggling with healthcare, which she lost because the place she worked for many years switched carriers, and many of these folks lost everything, and was still struggling with, how to pay off this house that was basically was living in a form of robbery. And you watch, and for me, I'm still, my sisters and I still process, like, what are people in our country dealing with when we talk about poverty and these kind of intersectional issues, right? As mid-councils, what type of, keep this in mind, you can popcorn this in the chat too, but as mid-councils, what type of poverty issues are you facing, right? Think about all those things. So this is a graphic that we often have on our materials. I love this graphic because it just lays out just the number of issues and the number of ways that we as the church working with communities can be addressing some of these issues, right? And some of the issues that are here, right? And education and its connection to poverty, domestic violence and its connection with the poverty. And so as we look at this, we think about, how do we as churches, how do we identify, name what is happening in our surroundings and be very intentional about that. Perhaps thinking a lot about, like, what does it mean to have this around us, but yet what will we do about this? And to also think, how can SDOP be instrumental in helping us walk with this, right? Just some years ago when I was pastoring in Philadelphia, we did what is now called Family Promise, but it was then called there was a particular network, and there was a woman that was there because she said, Reverend Johnson, I'm here because I had escaped domestic violence, and this was the place I can go that was where I could be anonymous, and me and my kids can be anonymous, and we can transition to whatever's next for us and be protected. And so thinking about, how do we partner? What types of things can we be doing as churches? What kind of things can we be doing as churches, partnering with self-development of people, partnering with each other? How do we walk together in these particular things?
So, as we both have been mentioning, SDOP has partnered with a lot of organizations around the country, i.e., a lot of grassroots groups. So this is really what's on the screen. These are just a couple of examples. So this is an immigrant group. Most of them are from, I believe, in West and Central Africa. But this is a group that was funded by Pacific Presbyterian SDOP Committee initially, and then later funded by National Self-Development of People. They're based in Gardena, California. Mustard Seed Impact International is their full name. They serve a diverse population of immigrant families with a particular focus on African diaspora women. So they've been around since 2023, and they are doing great work in terms of providing trauma-informed, as well as culturally appropriate support services. And most of their clients have been affected by war, violence, and displacement. So this is a wonderful project that through SDOP, Peace USA has partnered with. And then another one, we talked about what's going on with housing, lack of affordable housing / homelessness. So this is a group that approached us several years ago, and they are working, it's an advocacy project, Homeless Action Committee, Worcester Homeless Action Committee. And so they have, through the years, sort of reworked themselves into Dismas House, also still a grassroots group. and then most recently as the Commonwealth Green Low Income Housing Coalition. So they have spent many years working on creating new housing vouchers for homeless inmates, developing restorative justice opportunities in the courts, and working on education and advocacy campaigns for homeless and ex-offenders. I think one of the really great things about the Ministry of SDOP, somebody puts in the chat about relationships, something about relationships, and that is exactly what the SDOP ministry is about. So I spoke with the person that co-founded this entity when it was still Worcester Homeless Action Committee. I spoke with him, I think, several months ago. But the wonderful thing is the very first time that he approached SDOP, gosh, that was, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. But, as I was explaining, they have evolved into these other two groups that I mentioned in this description. But it was really great to hear him talk about how even to this day, they are housed at a PCUSA congregation. They have folks from that particular congregation that are very supportive of the group. And so these partnerships and relationships are really at the center of the work that STOP does.
So I think a lot about Mutame. Your response reminds me of the importance of understanding what is systemic poverty. Refers to the economic exploitation of people who are poor through laws, policies, practices, and systems that perpetuate their impoverished status. Laura Vandell, I'm calling you out in this as well, because we worked on this Poverty by America study together. And I think one of the difficult things that I found, and I'm not sure if you found this as well, Laura, but one of the things that I found with our Presbyterian siblings, systemic poverty is hard for them. It's really hard for them. We like, just as you mentioned, Rutame, we like ascribing blame. It's more comfortable for us to think that there's something inherently wrong with people. Yes, there are lazy people, but there are lazy rich people, right? So it's not really an argument, right? But yeah, there's a real wrestling for folks of the concept of systemic poverty, and systemic poverty it's a form of systemic violence, right? Anytime, whether it's intentional or not intentional, it can be considered systemic violence when people do not have access to healthcare, when they do not have access to the services to take care of communities. In his book, Matthew Desmond defines it as poverty that is not simply the result of an individual failure or bad luck, but is instead perpetuated by laws, policies, practices, and systems that economically exploit poor people, or people who are poor. So it's important for us, as we are doing this work in anti-poverty, whether you are doing it with STOP, which we would prefer, would love to do that, partner, or whether you're doing it with your church, which we equally love, is to keep in mind, how do we educate folks to understand systemic poverty, and that this particular poverty creation systems are the types of things that we need to address, right? What did I read? It was a great quote, and I'm trying to think of who it came from. It said something like, poverty is one of the evils, then election is the cure, right? Like, how do we be thinking about the policies and practices in the Politico to address these issues? There was oh gosh, it must have been, it was Kelly Brown Douglas. It's one of my favorite things to quote, because it still just, it echoes with me. I was listening to this podcast, and the womanist theologian Kelly Brown Douglas was being interviewed, and the interviewer asked her, should we be political? And my favorite answer, she said, well, they didn't kill Jesus for praying. And so it's one of these kinds of things where we understand that systemic poverty is real. Exploitation of people is real through systems, and how do we I recognize I'm more than likely right now preaching to the choir, but how do we get our Presbyterian siblings to understand this? Some of our STOP communities have been really good in articulating these things, because they've been living, and they've been able to say, we can show you how economic exploitation has harmed our communities. We can show you how policies have hurt our communities. We can show you how systems of racism, particularly as we talk about race and racial justice, how racist systems continue to malign and target and destroy communities. And so it's a matter of getting people to understand the gears, all the things that work together that make this happen, just as the cure is intersectional, right? The causes are also intersectional, right? All kinds of things happening to make poverty happen. We included this. I think Margaret usually presents this piece here. I don't know if you've noticed the code. The code, this was hard because we had to import it from somewhere. But the code is when you see purple, that's Alonzo, and when you see green, it's Margaret. And we probably have figured that out, but that's our code. But I think Margaret usually presents this piece here. And it's an important piece to understand as we continue to think about what One Great Hour sharing is all about.
Yeah. So you see on your screen the focus for Presbyterian Life and Witness, which is what we're now called poverty, disaster, hunger, climate change, immigration, and that includes migration and refugees. And then one of the things that we have done at the domestic level, and this has also been done at the international level, but at the domestic level, as you see on your screen there, those are the folks that have been involved with our collaborative efforts, because we have certainly we're very different in some respects, PDA, PHP, SDOP, but there are some common places where we can, explore collaboration possibilities. And so we have come together to collaborate on, for example, projects in Hawaii. I think I mentioned that earlier, and also Puerto Rico at the national level. So we wanted you to just be aware of that. I know that we need to wrap up by 11:30, Alonzo, so I won't go into any depth on this. I will pass it back to you.
So affordability, big issue. We've been talking about affordability. SDOP, we're doing a series on affordability, which we're going to be rolling out in September. It will start with labor and affordability, and that's going. And there's dates. We'll send these to you so that you will know when we're doing these things. But this is usually this is a Margaret presentation piece here. So Margaret, you want to talk a little bit about the poverty levels and all those things?
Well, just to also mention, since you alluded to that series that we'll be doing, it's in the chat. I've put the link in there. We would love to see you all be a part of that. We'll be featuring, for the most part, our SDOP funded partners, so you get to hear from them. But I think as we can see, those dollar amounts on there just do not cut it in terms of what is actually needed for households to be able to live in a way that is sustainable to cover food, clothing, medical care, transportation, shelter, etc. It's amazing to think that a household of four, $30,000, is what some people literally are getting, or at least this was defined as the poverty level line for 2025. It's just not enough for people to make it.
Large conversations in changing the poverty line because it's not realistic. Absolutely. I'm going to just move us along real quickly. So 3 R's are doing the work of solidarity, anti-poverty, and community building together, right? It's righteousness, relationships, and resources. This is the wisdom we've learned from our SDOP funded communities and our work together, right? This is important. Each of these three components have been really important aspects of doing this work of solidarity, of deep solidarity, as Jörg Rieger, the scholar, calls it, deep solidarity, where we learn the stories, we share stories, but we also, it doesn't become oppression Olympics, but we understand each other. Our touch point is human pain. Our touch point is poverty, but most importantly, our touch point is liberation. It's eradication. It's wholeness. It's all those great things that are important. You're probably wondering why there is a pirate on the screen, and this is your homework, and so you can remember this. R, right? R. And so I'll be here all week. So this is your way to remember these three pieces. Righteousness is one. Righteousness and justice, right? We know the word sadaka, right? I like to say sadaka because I think of Neil Sadaka. But righteousness and justice, the biblical foundations, right? Righteousness is justice, and this is what our communities remind us. And it makes me think a lot of Walter Brueggemann, who we lost several years ago. Good Presbyterian Old Testament scholar who connects righteousness to shalom by emphasizing that shalom, wellness, is relational justice. He argues that righteousness involves putting substance into the claims of shalom, which is about moving others towards well-being and social equity. Right? So this is, justice and righteousness, shalom and wholeness are related. This is our clarion call to it. That's the Book of Order on the left. I won't read through it all real quick, but it calls us to advocacy, right? That's Reverend Catherine Kopar and I doing communion at Harvey Brown in Louisville some years ago. But the Lord's Supper, we think about the righteousness that is mentioned, right? The symbol of the table. And what does that mean? Provision and justice and welcome. It is really kind of it's embossed in our tradition, for lack of a better way of saying this, right? It's couched, it's forged in who we are as Presbyterian folk, right? To do the work of justice as righteousness, and our the sacraments reminds us for this, right? Like a friend of mine always says, if you're not going to take care of all children, then stop doing baptisms, right? And so there's something powerful about our tradition and who we are. And advocacy is part of who we are. It's interwoven. It's in there. Like, remember those old spaghetti commercials for the spaghetti sauce? It's in there, right? It's baked in there. It's cooked in there. It's who we are. As Jesus says, I come to bring good news to the poor. I just put this on here. I know you're recording this, but that is the poverty website that Laura Vandell and several others that work with our poverty group, we have put some materials together, and you can find some of those materials on this website. So it'd be something to look for. So I want to just leave it there. You want to take a picture of it, but then you'll have this recorded, so you'll be able to have it as well. But policy is important. As we're doing this work, I have to remind people that someone said to me, so we don't say much about this stuff, do we? I'm like, yeah, we do. That's why we have general assemblies. And this is what we said in the 208th General Assembly in 96. And I highlighted that piece. I won't go through it, but as you read it, right, you see, Presbyterians said these things. Presbyterians talked about these things. Presbyterians studied these things. I think what is always interesting when I first read this years ago, you think about things like ethnic conflicts, civil wars, and things like excessive military expenditures. And in my brain, it's always somewhere out there. But then when you read this, you recognize it's here. It's us. It's our country. Control of economic resources by elite minorities, right? So these are the things that we need to be focused and paying attention to as we're doing this work of anti-poverty. And righteousness is this as well. Utame, how long do we have? Is it 11:30 or 12?
It's well, we have until 12.
Yes.
We have like 11:30 to kind of like wrap up and have questions. We already had a session of questions, so yes, you're granted a couple of more minutes. Yes. But I do want to honor people's time. So
yes.
yes.
Yes, wonderful. Margaret?
So one of the things I think that it's good to remind ourselves of is as we're engaging with the communities that we may want to learn more about and to possibly partner with, we want to be mindful of the language that we're using to describe the communities that we wish to partner with. So maybe language like communities of need, is something we may want to reconsider, because that seems to imply that only they have needs, right? They may have financial needs, but they bring a lot to the table that they can teach us. And then cultures of poverty, the connotation assumption behind these terms and ideas is what I was just saying, that, we're sort of like the saviors going in to assist. But again, the truth is that they have some things to offer us that we can learn from them as well.
Relationships, in Dava is a good word. It means taking care of the community business in Zulu. It means that we come together to take care of business and take care of each other. This is very short, but we found this to be one of the most effective ways to talk about the danger of a single story of folks. So let's run it. Hopefully you can hear it.
I come from a conventional middle-class Nigerian family. My father was a professor. My mother was an administrator. And so we had, as was the norm, live-in domestic help who would often come from nearby rural villages. So the year I turned 8, we got a new houseboy. His name was Fide. The only thing my mother told us about him was that his family was very poor. My mother sent yams and rice and old clothes to his family. And when I didn't finish my dinner, my mother would say, "Finish your food. Don't you know people like Fide's family have nothing?" So I felt enormous pity for Fide's family. Then one Saturday, we went to his village to visit. And his mother showed us a beautifully patterned basket made of dyed raffia that his brother had made. I was startled. It had not occurred to me that anybody in his family could actually make something. All I had heard about them was how poor they were, so that it had become impossible for me to see them as anything else but poor. Their poverty was my single story of them. Years later...
So a single story of folks, right? So we understand poverty and relationships in addressing poverty this way. I love Kimberly Crenshaw. She's a lawyer, talked about intersectionality. She was one of the ones, and yes, and this is critical theory. So hopefully you've signed the waiver, right? This is critical theory stuff. And Kimberly Crenshaw talks about the interconnected nature of social categorization. We all see this at play, that, that you cannot, in many ways, you cannot separate class from race. You can't separate these things, right? There's like a compounding of oppressions that happen, overlapping in interdependent systems of discrimination, right? We all know it, right? What does it mean to be poor and Black and elderly and gay or lesbian, right? I mean, you can look at this and you can see how the intersections play. So relationships are important because we need to understand that poverty is not just a single story, right? It's not just one story. That there are many layers of this, many layers, and many layers of the issues, right? Hunger and housing are connected. Race and education. I spent 8 years as a volunteer chaplain in a prison. I can tell you, jail, race, and poverty and education are connected. All these kinds of things, and we have to remember these things. That this is not a single story, and this does away of the savior mentality. We're going to go and save the issue. We just address the issue. We throw money at it. It's over. We recognize these issues are far deeper. Love this from Audre Lorde. There's no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives. And we remember this as we do this work. I'll move us to our, I think you all know about the relationship pieces and all these kinds of things. Nothing about us without us. All the things that we should be doing. You should be inclusive. But there's, there's this guy, right, that reminds us who is our neighbor. How do we make those relationships? and work with communities. But resources is important, and asset mapping is important. How are we doing this? Comes from Luther Snow. News of the Day teaches us that we don't have enough. We live in scarcity rather than abundance. And this is where the church can be really introspective and introspectively looking at what do we have? What ways are we really blessed in addressing these issues of poverty? And this is kind of the resource piece. Margaret, we can do a quick asset mapping exercise. Margaret will take us through this. It takes a few minutes, and let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that sometimes, as we listen to the information that we've shared, sometimes it is a lot of information. And so we might find ourselves wondering, well, what can I do? What can our church do? And so we invite you to consider the things that we're seeing on the screen. So physical assets, uh, you know, what kind of space do you have at your church that maybe you could have a community-based organization meet there that might be in need of space? There are a lot of really large churches, PCUSA churches around the country. So consider that as an asset, a physical asset that could be one way to partner with communities. And then individual assets, what are the strengths of folks in your congregation? There are some people that, we all have specific strengths, right? There's some people maybe that are very good at mentoring. There might be some people that are more handy with fixing things around the house. There are a lot of, again, maybe I can use the example of senior citizens that might be in need of someone helping with simple repairs. So those are assets that sometimes we don't particularly think of. Associations, yours and your congregations. What associations are you part of? Somebody put Interfaith Hospitality Network earlier in the chat. Years ago, when I served with a congregation in Alabama, we partnered with Interfaith Hospitality Network. I know they've changed their name now. I forget what it is called presently.
Promise.
I'm sorry, Family Promise.
Family Promise. Yeah.
Thank you. And that was a really wonderful way of congregation members coming together, right? We cooked, we cleaned out the part of the church where we put the beds, etc. So those are all ways that we can be partnering, and some of them really simple ways that we can be in partnership as a denomination, as a congregation with our community. And then economic assets, what sort of economic assets maybe do you have within your particular congregation that perhaps could be used even beyond what's currently being done to partner with communities that are experiencing poverty? So those are just a few things.
Okay, I'm going to move us through here. So here's some other assets. National Church Synod. Important assets. Call Rutame. Rutame, what we gonna do about this? These are the ways that we work together and make those particular connections. I don't know if you can see this this image is. I'm playing the drums, but I love, if you look right to the right there's Edwin, head of PDA, looking disparagingly at me as I'm playing this drum. I love this because I always tease him about this picture. I think he's actually digging it. But it's we were going up against the bail project or supporting the bail project and addressing the cash bail situation in Louisville. But it's how does the national church become important assets for you? Think about all of the resources that the national church has. SDOP, how can it become an important resource for you to engage? Especially in a local committee. I mean, Doug can speak to this too, like this idea of having some resources to be able to provide grants for communities, right? So these kinds of ways of thinking about those assets, your national church, your synod, churches that are doing this incredible work, right? Being a church that is connected, connectional church, relational church, right? These particular types of things. So these are the kinds of things to really be thinking about as you do this work, as you address issues of race and how they're connected to poverty, as you address the intersectional issues of poverty and all these particular types of things. And so these are the kinds of things we want you to keep in mind. I'm going to go to this slide because I think this is really important here. This comes from Peter Block, which is a great book, Community, the Structure of Belonging. An invitation is not only a step in bringing people together, it's also a fundamental way of being in a community. So invitation, the power of it. How do we invite our fellow churches into the work? How do we invite SDOP into the work? How does SDOP invite you, which we always want to do, into the work? It manifests the willingness to live in a collaborative way. This means that we can have a future that can be created without having to force or sell it or barter for it. When we believe that barter or subtle coercion is necessary, we are operating out of a context of scarcity and self-interest, the core currencies of the economists, right? So this idea of the power of invitation, how do we invite people, each other into this work? And so this is really powerful situation. And that's one of the gifts we have. Some quotes there. This is Community Land Trust, but we want to be able to offer you an opportunity to engage. This is really quick, and then we will end. We do want you to see this. The Power of Response. It's a Damayan Migrant Workers Association community. They are one of our self-development of people partners. You can see on the screen what they aim to do and the kinds of things that they do. But I think one of the best ways, and we'll end this with this video, is to hear them tell you what they do.
My name is Josie.
My name is Lydia.
My name is Sita, and I am a domestic worker.
I'm a domestic worker.
I'm a domestic worker.
We came to the US from the Philippines. The Philippines is our home, but it's very hard to earn money there.
The only job opportunities are abroad. I was forced to migrate.
I am a single mom with 4 children. My kids are my life, but I need to leave them so that they could have a good future.
I wanted to be able to send money back to support my family. I got a job from an employment agency to be a domestic worker in the US.
I knew it would be hard work, but I have no choice.
I had no idea what a fair wage should be in America. I just needed a job. And I never heard of labor trafficking. I had no idea what it meant.
I was brought to New York and given a job working for a family. I cleaned, cooked, and took care of the baby. I worked 19 hours a day with no days off. For all the work I did, they barely paid me. Once they paid me $200 for 4 months' work. I was hungry most of the time. My employer kept my passport. I couldn't leave the house without their permission. I lived with them for 3 years like this. It wasn't until I found the courage to escape that I learned I had been trafficked. Labor trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery.
I didn't think it could happen here, but now I know that there's a lot of Filipino workers being trafficked to the US. Many Filipino domestic workers are trafficked here by diplomat employers, and they are scared to speak up.
We were scared to speak up before we met others like us through Damayan.
Damayan is an organization of Filipino domestic workers.
Damayan helped us fight for our rights and challenge policies at the root of our problems.
Damayan has put and won wages back from traffickers, but we need your help to prevent trafficking from happening in the first place.
Join us in the fight to protect workers and hold traffickers accountable.
Help put an end to labor trafficking.
Don't let it happen here.
Find out how to stop labor trafficking at damayanmigrants.org.
Find my little show the meeting. There you go. All right, let me stop sharing that. All right. Wonderful. We are grateful for this opportunity to really be able to show you that that SDOP is not only just rooted in a history of the concern for justice, but also that we are it's a movement that addressing poverty is a movement. Laura mentioned the enormity of it, and yeah, it's enormous. It's going to take a lot of work, but it takes work with things that are already moving. The SDOP has been moving for years. And so this is the way that we want to invite you all to be part of this work. We also want, we are here for the invitation to walk with you in part of this work as we continue to learn about how to engage in poverty eradication from our community partners. They're the ones who know. They're the ones who say, hey, this is what is right and just. They're the ones who say, this is what works and this is what doesn't. They're the one who says that this is doing this on behalf and not, and not to us or for us. They're the ones who are able to determine what levels of participation are going to be good to fight the systems of oppression. So, this is, we invite you into our work and also invite questions too.
Any questions, comments?
I have a question. This is Heather. I'm the office manager at the Senate. Um, the poverty line is always like so egregiously low. Um, and I mean, I think I'm pretty sure that's intentional because capitalism wants poor people to believe that they're actually middle class. Um, but I was just wondering from an SDOP point of view, when you're thinking about the work that you're doing with impoverished people, how much do you consider that poverty line, or is there another kind of poverty line that you follow?
That's a good question. I'm gonna say something, but I think Margaret can also speak to how we gauge that. I think poverty, as we know, just as you mentioned, this line is not accurate. But poverty is also there's something that's really subjective about it too.
Hmm.
Organizations that come to us, they can tell us how we ask give us help us understand your situation of poverty, and they're able to tell us their stories, and they're able to describe to us the ways that they are not able to have access to things. They are able to say to us, yes, we understand that the poverty line is here, but we also see the pain, and we also understand the disenfranchisement. And we also understand that this line was written, what was it, created 68, 69? One of these years, they understand that the poverty kind of concept of poverty line might be a little dated. We understand that because we see poverty contextually too. We know when people are hurting. We know when people are struggling. We know that, we know and you all know this, we have communities that, we're one paycheck away from poverty. We might be one paycheck away from being evicted, one paycheck away from losing our benefits. Some of us are in situations, I lose my job, I lose my health insurance. So poverty is incredibly contextual, and it's real, and it goes beyond this understanding of the line, right? It is really about how people are living and struggling.
Yeah, I just wonder, like, as a person that I make way above the poverty line, and this has like always been my situation as a single mom, is that, I make too much money to get any help, but I don't make enough money that I don't need help. Um, and I just think that like the I wish we would talk. Well, you kind of do, but like I kind of compare the poverty line to like BMI, how like this whole idea of the body mass index has been like irrelevant, but I'll go to the doctor and they still refer to the BMI chart. And I feel like we do that with the poverty line, and I feel like it also, especially in a denomination where we have such an emphasis on finance and we consider good stewardship to be, quite frankly, wealth hoarding. Um, I just feel like people with that mindset, when they see the poverty line, they're like, oh, well, I don't know anyone that makes that little. Like, I don't know anyone that makes that little. And
Mhm.
so it kind of like erases where I think it makes it harder for some people to understand poverty if
Mhm.
they've never lived in that kind of like middle space.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for the question. That's a great question. So, the way SDOP on our application, the way we deal with this question is we actually ask the groups themselves to define poverty for us.
Mhm.
And that is because what might be considered poverty, for example, in New York City, is quite different from what might be considered poverty in maybe Huntington, Alabama,
Yeah.
or in Nairobi, Kenya, or, in some other place in the US. And so they tell us. And so we'll see things, for example, responses, for example, like we define poverty as the inability to put food on the table, for the whole month, to feed ourselves and our kids. Or we define poverty as the inability to make our paychecks stretch for 4 weeks. Um, so there are a lot of varied responses, as you can imagine, that we get to that question. But again, we recognize that the context is really huge, and that's why we get such a diverse range of responses. But yeah, thanks for asking that question.
That's great. Thank
And
you so much.
thank you, Heather, for bringing this up. It, it, it also to what Alonso and both Margaret, I think it was Alonso's turn when talk about intersection, context and intersection. There's so many factors. So you may have an income an income threshold that puts you either in the poverty line or above the poverty line. There's so many factors. I mean, we talked about healthcare, domestic abuse was briefly mentioned. Credit report, when particularly majority of women leave abusive relationships, they have been exposed to financial abuse, they're being exposed to lots of things. So their credit report, it's damaged. When you go to a new job, they're asked for credit reporting. We do this in our denomination, so there's certain things that we do systemically in our denomination, even in the hiring process, that puts in jeopardy people's life, and a decision can affect people's lives and their dependents. I mean, and going back to what I said about the ascription of moral character, if you trying to hide the best person, but somehow, she or he, uh, most likely a she, has a questionable credit report, why is the reason why you getting that information. So again, I'm just mentioning this, like Heather's point in raising the topic about our domination and our complicitness, and sometimes our intentional uh, ignorance about how we uh, perpetuate, the systems of poverty. And it's a good conversation. It's an excellent conversation to have, to bring awareness. So we have to think about those things in order to advocate, and in order to fight back, and in order to bring about the kind of world that God calls us to bring about, and I believe that God does that in baptism. So so thank you very much, Heather, for doing that, for bringing this up. It's 11:52. I want us to close this officially so that we can stop the recording. Well, you are more than welcome to stay and talk to our workshop facilitators today. So for all of those of you who are watching, the ones who will be watching our recording, thank you for being here. Thank you for being engaging, for your questions, for the conversation. Thank you so very much to Reverend Dr. Alonzo Johnson and to Margaret and Wally for bringing your wisdom, bringing awareness, and inviting us and motivating us to do this work. We continue the work of justice. So with this, we're gonna stop the recording.